From today, we are going to live in this house, so an outsider like you has to leave. You're a parasite.
What? I haven't heard anything about it.
We will also pay for the mortgage of this house from today.
What?
It seems like my sister-in-law and her husband want to kick me out of this house. I was scared of my sister-in-law, so I asked my husband for help.
Kevin, please say something.
However, instead of protecting me, my husband said, "It can't be helped. You nag too much." Furthermore, my parents-in-law said,
If those elites are going to support us, we do really need you, May.
That's right. We'll be fine, as long as we have those two elites here.
I confirmed that I was not needed by this family. I don't care anymore.
Did they just tell me to leave the house because they'll pay for the mortgage of this house? The monthly mortgage payment is $5,000 though.
I'll make them realize. Thinking that way, I told my sister-in-law and her husband the real mortgage amount.
By the way, the monthly mortgage for this house is $5,000. Well, I guess elites like you can afford it.
Hearing an unexpected amount, my sister-in-law and her husband said,
What? 5,000.
and stood there dumbfounded. They had no idea that I'd been supporting this house. Such foolish people.
This is the end of this family.
I am May, currently 35 years old. I have loved cooking since I was a child. After I graduated from high school, I attended culinary school and now run my own cooking classes. My husband Kevin is 2 years younger than me. I met Kevin at the gym I always went to. He was a trainer at the gym and my personal instructor. I was drawn to his well-toned body and his gentle guidance. Gathering my courage, I asked him, "Could you give me your number?
Of course. Here's my number.
Would you like to have a dinner with me sometime?" We started dating shortly after that. After about 2 years of dating, Kevin proposed to me, and we got married. My relationship with Kevin was smooth without any major issues, but there was one thing that bothered me. It was my in-laws. "Oh, welcome. It's small and messy, but make yourself at home." My mother-in-law greeted me like that. I smiled and said, "Yes, thank you very much." But I was shocked by the dirtiness of my in-laws' house. Despite expecting guests, there were cookie crumbs all over the table, and garbage bags, probably accumulated for weeks, were scattered on the floor. To top it off, there were several used insulin syringes, probably for my mother-in-law's diabetes treatment, scattered around. I glanced at my husband, but he tilted his head, looking a little bit confused.
And then said this, as if he realized something. Oh, my mom has diabetes.
Of course, I was curious about the syringes, but I was wondering what they were for. I wanted him to tell me why this house is in this horribly dirty condition, but perhaps my husband is used to this sight and didn't say anything about it. When I told my parents that I was bringing Kevin to their house, they rearranged the furniture, thoroughly cleaned the house, and prepared special meals. However, there was no sign of welcome from my in-laws, which made me a bit uneasy. After chatting with my in-laws, I excused myself to use the restroom.
On my way, I unexpectedly bumped into my sister-in-law. Flustered, I quickly said, "Oh, nice to meet you. My name is May. I'm dating your brother. I hope we get along," and cheerfully greeted her. Then my sister-in-law asked, furrowing her brows, "So you're May? I heard you're working hard at your job?"
I wondered if she was opposed to women working so hard. No, I just run a small cooking school and work there. I decided not to mention that I have a few branches of the school. Then my sister-in-law snorted and said, "What? A cooking school? That's a job that just anyone can do. Haha. I mean, my mom, dad, and Kevin all said that you were working so hard. I thought you worked at some big company or something. Haha." It seemed like she was making fun of me. I tried to brush it off, so I just laughed. Haha, and attempted to leave the situation, but then she grabbed my arm and asked, "By the way, from which university did you graduate?" I was a bit surprised, but I didn't feel the need to hide anything, so I replied, "I've always loved cooking, so I attended a culinary school." I didn't go to university. What? You didn't go to university? Unbelievable. I graduated from Harvard. My husband also graduated from the same university, and now he works for an IT company. The disparity is quite something, haha. I felt uneasy about that statement. I make enough money to get by without a college degree. So what is so important about educational background? Plus, Why is she talking so much about her own achievements to a person she just met when nobody asked her? I couldn't help but find her behavior unpleasant as she was looking down on me, but it was the day that we announced our engagement. There was no point in arguing with my sister-in-law. I just smiled and said, "Wow, that's impressive. Well then, goodbye." However, my sister-in-law continued, "We earn a lot, you know. We're total elites." She bragged about her achievements. I just forced a polite smile and returned to where my in-laws and Kevin were. While the conversation with my sister-in-law was extremely unpleasant, I loved Kevin, so I decided to tolerate my interactions with my sister-in-law, knowing they would happen only a few times a year. And I successfully became a part of Kevin's family. Little did I know, this choice would prove to be a mistake. Several months after marrying Kevin, he suddenly proposed.
Actually, my parents aren't feeling well, so can we live with them?
I didn't have a good impression of living together, so I asked.
Living together is a bit... Can't we live near your parents instead?
But he pleaded.
You know, they are both elderly. I'm really worried. I'm the eldest son, so please.
With his hands folded in front of his face, I just needed a little time to think.
But I've already told my mom and dad. They're both really looking forward to it.
Why didn't you discuss with me before telling your parents? I was exasperated with my husband. Above all, he brought up the topic of living with his parents after I had seen how dirty my in-laws' house was. So I was worried that my own home might also be ruined. I pleaded with Kevin several times to reconsider, but he kept finding excuses and wouldn't listen to me. I eventually gave up and said to Kevin, at the very least, let's separate the space and everything in the house. We should even have a separate front door. Also, please make sure that they take out the garbage on designated days and maintain a clean home. If you can enforce the rules properly with your parents, then...
Sure, I got it. I'll talk to them. His face lit up and he left happily.
From then on, things went smoothly, and discussions about the two-family house progressed. I paid a lot of attention to details while designing the house, such as the layout to match the flow of housework. Making rooms for future children, and a kitchen that makes it easy to cook, which is the thing I love. Because of that, I ended up spending significantly more money than our budget allowed. Nonetheless, I was looking forward to our life in our new home. As for the mortgage, we put it in Kevin's name. We debated whether to have a joint mortgage, but considering the possibility of unforeseen accidents, we decided it would be wise to have it solely in my husband's name. I also believed it was important to uphold his status as the man of the house. Of course, I discussed the monthly payment amount and other details with my husband before I proceeded with building the house.
Well, my husband didn't seem very interested in the amount or the methods of the monthly payments.
And he wasn't really listening when the realtor was talking to him. Several months passed after that.
On the first day of living together, my mother-in-law came to me and said, "I never thought we'd live together like this. It feels like a dream to move from such a rundown house to such a big and beautiful one."
My in-laws were pleased. I heard those words and thought, I'm glad they're happy, but...
On the day before the first payment for the mortgage, since we bought the house, Kevin suddenly said, "I have to shut down the gym that I'm running at the end of this month." I asked him what happened. Apparently his colleague has been sexually harassing customers, and complaints poured in from those customers. The gym that he is running got a bad reputation, and he has no choice but to close. I was stunned.
Well, then what are you gonna do about the mortgage on the house?
I'll find a new place to work soon. I'm really sorry. For the time being, I want you to pay the monthly payment from your salary.
I thought about it for a while. Kevin is losing his job, not because he has done something wrong. Besides, we are now a couple. I told myself that we have to help each other and live.
I understand. In return, you have to find a job as soon as possible. Promise me that you will take care of the housework as well.
From that day onwards, we used my salary for the monthly payment. Fortunately, my cooking school was very successful and I was opening more and more schools. I also published a cookbook last year, and the sales were strong. I didn't have any problems with the super high monthly payment for the mortgage. Since then, I became the main breadwinner in place of my husband. I made sure that my parents-in-law and husband don't slack off, and told them firmly to do the housework properly and always tidy up. Whenever my in-laws left even a bit of trash lying around, I reminded them to clean up after themselves.
I would say, Rose, it is garbage day, isn't it? Were you planning to throw it out next week? Please make sure to do it today.
I also remind my husband.
How's the job search going? Have you found anything yet? Go to the employment office tomorrow, and if you're home, make sure to cook meals.
I nagged them repeatedly. Otherwise, Kevin would lose all motivation to find a job, and my in-laws were home all the time without a job, and they would just make more mess in the house and would never try to do any housework. However, it seemed that both my in-laws and Kevin didn't like my nagging, and they started resenting me. One day out of the blue,
May?
my sister-in-law and her husband came to our house. They forcefully closed the front door with a bang on purpose and entered the house as they stomped. Suddenly, you've been forcing my parents and brother to do housework and such, haven't you? She yelled in anger. I was quite surprised by this situation, but my in-laws and Kevin seemed entirely unsurprised, as if they had anticipated the visit from them.
I'm not forcing anyone. I protested.
But my sister-in-law's attack on me didn't stop.
In the end, she said, "Enough with your excuses. How can you treat them like that when you didn't even go to college and you are just a stupid person?"
I simply wanted to establish some rules. If we lived together, I tried to explain.
But my sister-in-law wouldn't listen and continued.
"Starting today, we are going to live here, so get out of this house right away."
We'll pay for the mortgage for this house from now on.
What? I haven't heard anything about that. Besides, I haven't done anything wrong. I've been just paying for the mortgage? You're not even our family, yet you barge in here and act all high and mighty. You're a parasite. Elites like us should live in this house, not an outsider like you. Get out,
she shouted angrily. I couldn't understand why she was saying such things, and it infuriated me. However, I realized it was futile to argue with such a person. I turned to Kevin and my in-laws for help, but as soon as our eyes met, they looked away.
Well, she made the elderly do household chores. They're not supposed to.
And even my father-in-law chimed in, saying she nagged us about the same things multiple times, expressing his agreement.
Besides, if Olivia and her husband are here, right?
Yeah, it's reassuring to have the two elites around, isn't it? And even Kevin, who should have extended a helping hand at such a time, didn't say anything to my sister-in-law and her husband. And...
Well, May nags too much, and it's annoying. Sorry, but there's nothing I can do.
he said something shocking. I came to realize that they had made a plan to force me out. My sister-in-law said, the monthly mortgage payment is about $1,000 anyway, right?
For us super elites, that's pocket change.
Yeah, it's chump change. We can easily afford it without you.
I couldn't help but wonder, huh? $1,000? Where did they get that number from? It's significantly lower than the payment for this house.
What? $1,000? Well, even $1,000 must be a lot for someone like you, huh? She sneered.
And then, my sister-in-law and her husband tried to drive me away, shouting, hurry up and leave.
Yes, hurry up.
I was initially saddened by the actions of my sister-in-law and her husband, as well as my in-laws and my husband. But somehow I reached a point where I just didn't care anymore. Wait, what was I even working so hard for? Do I deserve this? I began to question myself.
I see. I don't have to support this family anymore. The money I earn will be all mine. I don't have to worry about anything, and I'm free now.
I inexplicably felt relieved. It made me realize how much pressure it was to support this household all on my own. I decided to leave this family.
I understand. If that's how you all feel, I will leave this house.
I said. Everyone seemed relieved, because I didn't have a fit.
I'm glad that you understand. You take your stuff? My sister-in-law gathered my belongings while smiling and tossed them onto the floor.
I picked them up and whispered in my husband's ear.
We're getting divorced, right? I'll send the divorce papers tomorrow. Sign them and submit them to the city hall right away. I won't listen to complaints or objections. I don't care what happens anymore.
Upon hearing that, Kevin exclaimed, you are kidding, right? Divorce? He was surprised and grabbed my arm, trying to stop me. However, I shook his hand off and stared back at him defiantly. Seeing my expression, Kevin finally understood.
Fine.
He gave up and immediately agreed. Realizing that Kevin no longer had any feelings for me, I felt a deep sadness settle in. Anyway, it seemed my sister-in-law and her husband had misunderstood the amount of the monthly payment for the mortgage, so I had to correct it properly. Money matters could turn into significant troubles later on if left unaddressed. I stopped in front of the front door.
Oh, by the way, I turned around. I almost forgot to tell you. But you guys seem to have misunderstood the amount of the monthly payment for the mortgage. It's $5,000, you know?
I said with a smile.
We'll pay it if you can.
I said it in my head.
$5,000.
I could see my sister-in-law and her husband's faces turning pale.
Yes, it's $5,000. And the mortgage is in your brother's name. You can afford it, right?
I added.
My sister-in-law immediately looked at her brother, Kevin.
What? $5,000? It's not $1,000?
He seemed quite bewildered.
Well, I did tell you how much we have to pay every month before, but you never really paid attention. In fact, you haven't paid a single penny for the mortgage, so I guess you had no idea how much we've been paying.
I said, laughing at him.
No way. There's no way we can afford that amount.
I responded with a serious face.
Even I, who didn't go to college and just cook, can afford it on my own, but you two, who graduated from prestigious universities and work for big companies, can't afford it. It should be a breeze to pay such amount for you, shouldn't it?
I asked my sister-in-law in a high-pitched voice.
What? Are you making fun of us? Having graduated from a good college and working at a nice company is a different story. Who do you think you are?
They were angry with their faces turning red.
I looked at them, snorted, and said, well, I hope you guys will have a happy life without me. As of today, an outsider like me is leaving. Of course, I have no intention of paying for the mortgage for a house I don't live in. With that, I left the house. As I closed the door, I could see my sister-in-law and her husband kneeling on the floor in distress, through a crack. Upon seeing their state, I muttered, "This is the end of this family." After I left, I decided to return to my parents' home for the time being. My parents were quite surprised when I came back suddenly, but when I explained the situation, they comforted me with tears in their eyes.
You've worked hard. From now on, cherish your own life.
A few days later, I sent divorce papers to Kevin, and he submitted them to the city hall right away, and the divorce was successfully finalized. I heard that my sister-in-law and her husband were very angry at Kevin after that and said,
Kevin, make the payment for the mortgage.
However, he couldn't pay since he was unemployed, so now he is looking for a job while taking odd jobs here and there. In the end, my sister-in-law and her husband, who have a full-time job, ended up paying. However, due to financial strain, they started fighting often.
Whitmore, it's your fault.
Their marriage deteriorated. Eventually, her husband decided to leave her, and they got divorced. My ex-in-laws, ex-sister-in-law, and ex-husband started living together in the house with a $5,000 monthly mortgage payment. However, they couldn't keep up with the payments, so they left the house. Now a family of 5 is living in a rundown apartment in cramped conditions. As for my ex-sister-in-law, her junior colleagues didn't like her domineering attitude. They reported her to her superior, and she was transferred. Then she chose to resign because of it. Now, she's working part-time at a convenience store, struggling to make ends meet in the shabby apartment. As for me, I published my second cookbook, and the sales have been quite strong. I'm earning enough from royalties to cover my rent. I also opened more schools and gained a significant increase in the number of students. I moved to a luxury condo in the heart of the city and living an elegant life. As for my personal life, I met a younger male student in my cooking class, and we're currently in a relationship.
You're cute, and I love you.
I can't help but think that I'm loved, even though it might sound boastful. Both my private life and my work are going well. I'm living so happily now that I almost forget about my ex-sister-in-law, her husband, ex-parents-in-law, and ex-husband.